Well, geez, how am I supposed to start this commentary video? This is the biggest decision I've ever made in my life, and I've never talked about it before. I grew up Mormon, and I left the Mormon church. It's the thing growing up that gave me the most anxiety by far, thinking about. It's such a big, aspect of who I am and why I am the way I am. You ever wondered why I don't swear? It's because I grew up Mormon. Just a bit of housekeeping. This video is not going to be an attack on the Mormon Church, which is also the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. That's what they're called. Most people just know them as Mormon, and so I'll probably toggle between the two, but I just want to say that. This video is not an attack on their religion or me telling you how to live your life or what's right or wrong. This is simply my experience growing up in this thing and leaving it. You might have heard some crazy things about the Mormon church. You might be like, oh my gosh, wait, polygamy? They used to have multiple wives? What? That's kind of strange. They didn't give black people the priesthood for a while? What? You might have heard of the play on Broadway about Mormons, or what's the other thing? The Secret Life of Mormon Wives. You might have heard about Mormon missionaries, the guy dressed up in white who come to your door and ask if you want to learn about God. That'll become a big topic later, but I sort of want to take a step back and explain this is my entire culture. This is everybody around me. The Mormon church, the epicenter of this religion, is in Utah. This is where I grew up. Everybody that I knew growing up was Mormon. I was one of the young men who would go around the congregation passing bread and water to the other people. I prayed in the sacrament in a little microphone while kneeling, blessing the bread. I did all of these things. I got baptized when I was 8 years old. I every week went to Young Men's. It's a big reason of why I did scouting. I mean, the church and scouting is separated now, but that's the reason I'm an Eagle Scout. It's a high demand religion that is everything I ever knew. And the place I want to start with this story is the first time that I ever learned there were other religions and that Mormonism wasn't even the biggest religion was when I was 8 and my dad told me. And I remember being so shocked. I was like, what? Mormonism isn't even the biggest religion? What? Islam, Christianity, Buddhism, Hinduism? What are all these things? Mormonism isn't even that big. What? Everybody I know is Mormon. And I remember thinking to myself, well, if there's all these religions and everybody's saying that they have the right religion. One of the biggest tenets of Mormonism is Mormons have the only true, restored gospel. Some other churches might have a couple of things, right? They believe in the Bible. Yeah, we believe in the Bible too, but we believe in the Book of Mormon. We are the only people on the planet who have the entire full truth. Well, if everybody says they have the... Wait, that means by default, most people just have to be wrong. Math says most people have to be wrong if everybody's saying they're right. And this was the first big epiphany as a young child, honestly, thinking, wait, billions of people are just wrong? Because one of the biggest arguments in my head as a young child of why this is right is, everybody, all the adults in my life, everybody around me, they all think it's right. There's no way that everybody is just wrong about something. And then I sort of have these thoughts of most people have to be wrong. Just because X number of people believe in something does not make it right. And this is the first time in my life as a young kid thinking, what the heck? However, another major tenet of the Mormon religion is, if you're having doubts or if you want to know if the church is true, read the scriptures and pray to God and ask if it's true and you will get an answer. And I remember doing this. I remember reading and sitting down and praying to Heavenly Father saying, is this thing true? And I didn't feel anything. This was another big epiphany for me. I remember thinking to myself, even if I did feel something, how would I know that feeling isn't just me creating the feeling? How would I know that it's something else? Because I can totally imagine a world where I can make myself feel what Mormons would call the still small voice or a warm feeling in your heart, sort of this confirmation that it's true. And I just remember thinking, I think I could totally manufacture that experience. And so you might be thinking to yourself, oh, did you leave the Mormon church as an 8-year-old kid then because you suddenly didn't believe in this thing? No, it's It's your entire world. The thought of leaving this thing, which is something that sort of plagued my life for a while, it's scary. It's sort of just like losing your entire world, if that makes sense. And I'm an 8-year-old kid, bro. I'm not like super deeply thinking about this, but I say it as context because I never really like believed in God or the mysticalness of what religion is. Don't get me wrong. I was a very Mormon person. I did all of the Mormon things. I went to church and Sunday school. I tried to be really nice and kind. The things they say about being kind it's like a core element of my being, and I fully believe in that. I just don't really believe stuff about God, or honestly, a lot. I think a good way to put this is an analogy to the Easter Bunny or Santa. You know, at some point, I probably believed in it, and like, yeah, I was like, yeah, God is like real, and this is true. You know, that's what everybody like tells you. So it makes sense to just believe that. But for the vast majority of me growing up, I never like really believed in it. I left when I was 18, and that was the first time I said out loud to the people in my life, hey, I don't really believe in this thing. I'm not going to go to church. And the thought of doing that for years was really scary. When you turn 18 in the Mormon church, I don't want to say you're expected to, but it's very common, and it's the culture to go on a mission. That's the most massive thing as young adults growing up, is going on a mission when you turn 18. A mission, for those of you who are not in the Mormon church, is a very intensive, almost militarized mission for the church, where for 2 years you leave your home. Most of the time, leaving your country, you go to a foreign country and preach the gospel. You try to convert people. You're under the leadership of the church. You don't have contact with your family. And for 2 years, you do that. Growing up, I thought to myself constantly, I'm not gonna do that 2 years. That's 10% of your life by that point. That seems like a massive waste of time. I can't do that. But people say, it's the best thing that you'll ever do in your life. All I hear is, yeah, a mission is the best thing you will ever do in your life. When are you going on a mission? You going on a mission? So the story of me leaving the Mormon church is really, it felt like a ticking time bomb of, okay, when I turn 18, by 18, I have to make that decision. I have to be out. I got to tell my friends and family that, yeah, I don't believe in this thing. And it's not just that yeah, I don't really believe in this. It's like, I'm leaving this. And there's a difference there. This idea about the mission honestly wasn't even the first step, though, because the first thing that really gave me anxiety and that made me think, okay, I probably gotta leave this thing was seminary. Seminary is, I think, just a general term for religious classes, but for my life, that meant when you go to 9th grade, you can take seminary for the first time, which is essentially having an entire class period where you leave the physical school building, you go to a church building, and basically have Sunday school. You get taught by leaders of the church, and it's something in Utah that is very common. And in junior high, I would constantly think, oh my gosh, I really do not want to go to seminary. That just seems like a waste of time. I don't really believe in this. I don't want to go spend an hour every single day of my life, 365, going and learning about this. I don't know a lot of things, but I know I'm not going to do seminary. And as 9th grade approached, it felt like this big, scary thing that I would have to confront, and I imagined to myself, frick, when that day comes, I'm gonna have to tell my parents and my family, I don't actually believe in this church thing, because it was very easy to not believe it and just kind of do it, because it's not anything horrendous, you know. We're going to church talking about being kind, being Christ-like, being like Jesus. That's awesome. That's cool. When we get to the stuff about, Mormon doctrine, God, heaven, Adam and Eve, I'm not really there. But all the stuff about being kind, I'm totally there for it. Love it. I'm going to scouting, going to young men's. It's my friend group that's cool. It's about being inclusive. Love all that. The other stuff, yeah. And I don't want to give off this impression of I had an insane life where 24/7 I was constantly obsessed and so anxious about this question of like, I gotta like leave this religion. No, it wasn't that, but it was a constant reoccurring thing in my life that sort of felt dread that was coming. I think a good way to put this is I would go to Young Men's events, which is, Young Men's was this organization through the church where you basically have some older, like, men in the church leading a group of teenagers and doing activities. And for lots of those activities, we would go to little campouts, or we would go on trips, and some of them would last a week. And on those week-long outings, we would finish the week sitting at a campfire talking about our experience, and people would then start bearing their testimonies. They would start talking about God and the Mormon church and how much they believe in it, and everybody would sort of go around the circle, and you would sort of just pour your heart out, and people would get very emotional saying, I love this week. I love you guys. This is so awesome. I have so much faith in the church and Christ and Joseph Smith. And then when they're talking about having a good time and I love you guys and being kind, I'm like, I'm so there. I love it. This is such an awesome, special moment. But I don't have a testimony of the church. I don't believe in this stuff. And I would never bear my testimony. And as those things would happen, you're sort of sitting there thinking, for Rick. But let's keep this story moving along. The first big checkpoint of, like, dread is 9th grade rolls around, and I tell my parents I don't want to take seminary. And they're like, that's totally fine. That's totally chill. We support you. Yeah, what other classes do you want to take? You want to take chemistry? And oh my gosh, shout out my parents. Thank you. That was awesome. I know that wouldn't have been the same story in some other households. And it's really funny because I exhibit a lot of qualities of a very Mormon guy. I say this because it was a common occurrence for people to ask, oh, what period do you have seminary? And when I said, I don't have seminary, I'm not going to seminary, they would always be so shocked. You? Out of anybody in the school, I would have thought you took seminary. What? You're like so nice. You're like and it's just, I think what it is I was just a very rule following, hopefully nice guy in school. And I think it's kind of dumb that people would assume that means I go to seminary. Oh, another big thing, I don't swear, you know? So, like, I exhibited all of these qualities of, like, a very typical Mormon guy. I went to some weddings this year, and I had a great talk with some people, and they still thought I was Mormon, bro. It's been, like, 5 years. So just, I have a little bit of frustration about this of, like, yeah, you cannot swear, you can be kind, and you cannot freaking believe in all of this stuff. It's not mutually exclusive. That's probably just like a me thing in like a Utah thing, but sorry, that's a little bit of frustration there. And now I want to introduce another big component of this story. My parents, more specifically my dad. My dad also left the Mormon church, and the best thing he ever did for me, I still stand by this, is he left the Mormon church. It sort of gave me a pathway and a way to think about leaving the church, and probably also took away pressure because he wasn't like a Mormon guy, I guess, if that makes sense. And he actually did this a long time ago, well before my whole dread about seminary came around. And you might be thinking to yourself, oh, why didn't you just like leave the church with your dad when you were like younger? Sorry, I was just like a scared kid. Never really said that I didn't believe in all this stuff. But for a big portion of growing up, my dad would it's kind of funny. He would show us like science videos, and my dad like obviously was doing all this sort of stuff to like encourage his boys that like you don't have to be like to question, you know? And obviously I can't like speak for my dad, but him leaving the church, that kind of like broke his entire world. That like messed him up. He was the most Mormon of Mormon people. He got married in the temple. That's his entire family. That was his entire belief in life. And him coming to terms with not believing that and then his kids still being in it just kind of shattered. You know, it wasn't like the reason that my parents got divorced, but it was definitely a contributing factor. You know, if you have divorced parents and you've never like called them up and asked them, "Yo, why'd you guys get divorced?" Maybe don't phrase it like that, but I would highly recommend. I did that like 6 months ago or something. I just called both my parents and said, why'd you guys get divorced? Because they'd never really talked about it. Great conversation. So you might be thinking, what about your mom? Absolutely none of your business. You have no right to an opinion on these people in my life. I'm not them. You don't get to hear their opinions. Get the frick out of there. What I can say is I love both of my parents. I think they raised me well. But my 18th birthday rolls around and I say, I'm not going on a mission. Both my parents were supportive, and I was totally fine. Oh, one thing I forgot to mention about the seminary thing. Wait, this is just kind of a crazy tangent side story. When I said I wasn't going to seminary, yeah, my parents were totally chill, totally fine. That was awesome. You know what wasn't cool? The seminary teachers, both of them coming to my house, knocking on the door, getting me to come to the door, me as a 14-year-old kid facing these two adults, and them asking me, so why aren't you going to seminary? Would you consider going to seminary? And as a 14-year-old uncomfortable kid at the door, I remember saying, yeah, sure, I'll consider it. Because obviously, yeah, I've considered going to seminary, and I've made the decision, I don't want to go to seminary. Obviously, that's why I did it. Their follow-up response, so will you go to seminary then? It's like, no, I just said I would consider. It was just, oh my gosh. So nothing crazy like that happened when I said I wasn't going on a mission, but I did try to record this video a week ago, and I think that version does a better job with this next bit. But I said, yeah, I'm not going on a mission. The same reaction. My parents were like, yeah, that's totally chill. We support you. We love you. And I was like, dang, okay. I'm so glad I could just say that. You know, I know in some households that would not have gone the same way. But every single one of my close friends went on a mission. My oldest brother went on a mission. In 2019, he got his mission calls. He's a very devout LDS member, very smart, and he left for 2 years. And I became the older brother. It's kind of a weird feeling, but when your oldest brother is gone, you know, and thankfully, the same year that he left, the Mormon Church created a rule where you can call your family once a week, as opposed to in the past, you get one call on Mother's Day and one call on Christmas. You get 4 calls in the entire 2 years. So it was cool that we got to talk to him. I don't know if it was actually every week. Maybe he only got to like talk to my parents every week. There was some contact, but it didn't prevent me from feeling like the older brother. Not in necessarily a bad way. I don't want my brother to listen to this and be like, oh my gosh, my brother started feeling like the older brother. I should have been there. No, I know my brother loved his mission. It's just good context for like my life, I guess. Because it is just like a subtle way in how you view yourself. And then before I knew it, every single one of my friends, one by one, left. They got their mission call, went to a different country, and I didn't see them for 2 years. Man, I didn't think I would get emotional with this. It was kind of a triple whammy. I graduated high school in 2020. The COVID-19 pandemic hit. And all of my best friends went on missions. You know, it's a time of life where you graduate high school and everybody goes their separate ways. Frick, bro. I don't even want to cry. I did not think I was going to cry. I don't want this to come out as, you know, poor me. I had a bad experience. I love the way that my life has worked out. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. But this is the same time that I became a YouTuber. I found myself at home with a lot of free time. And I started making videos for the first time. And that year, oh my gosh, dude, I'm a wreck. I made online friends for the first time, and I became part of these communities that are my life now. And I go to conventions, and I hang out with my friends, and... Dude, this is the me crying.
Oh my gosh, do I need to like re-record this? I gotta get a hold of myself. I can't believe I'm crying. And I love life and I love people and I'm happy with the way that things turned out. And I still talk to all of those friends that went on missions. I still get along with my brother. He's my. I can't start crying again. I love my brothers. I'm very close with them. At one point, I was emailing 5 different people every single week who were all on missions. I was reading their emails and telling them, I can't, dude, I can't. I was telling them about my YouTube and, oh, I actually can't. I can't. I gotta stop. I got back at this.
Until I recorded that bit last week, I don't think I've ever fully recognized how pivotal that moment was in my life, leaving the Mormon church during COVID when I graduate high school, starting a YouTube channel. You know, one day in 2020, one Sunday, I decided not to go to church, and I haven't looked back since. And it's been maybe the most freeing thing that I've ever done. And yes, this is a massive part of how I became the person that I am, and it will always be a part of my life and the people around me. You know, I still have a lot of friends and family who are LDS, but I am so glad that my worldview is not shaped by a religion telling me what to do or how reality works, but I have a worldview shaped from the people I interact with, the places that I go, and the things that I learn. And I freaking love life, and I think being kind is so important. So with that, I hope you guys have a good rest of your day, and I will talk to you in the next one.